Welcome back to another episode of Avid Fantasy Football. Week 7's finally here. You know, we're flying through this season, it feels like. But Week 7's got some very interesting and also some very favorable matchups if you have some of these wide receivers, especially with a couple extra teams on bye week than usual this week. Why don't we go ahead and jump into this? We got Thursday Night Football, Jaguars at the Saints. And kicking us off here, you got Christian Kirk, who is just killing it right now. I mean, he's averaging 14 points a game. He's getting majority of the targets, getting majority of the catches for this team. Yardage is definitely there, and he's getting some red zone targets as well. Now, 14 points might not sound like a lot, but up against the Saints, I mean, for him to put up those numbers that he has against some of the tougher defenses that they have played this year, not saying that all of them have been tough, but some of them have been good or very underrated. 14 points is pretty good. Christian Kirk is definitely a wide receiver 2 for me this week, if not a high-end flex play, depending on who else you have. But yeah, Christian Kirk definitely a start for me. Now, Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones are going to be sits. Calvin Ridley looked like he was back and then fell back to the grace of earth. Like, I mean, this is unbelievable. He looked like he was going to have a bounce-back year. I was on the belief train that, yes, Calvin Ridley's here. He had a full-off season with the Jaguars, ready to pull off another great season, and he's nowhere to be found. So, unfortunately, that's going to be how it is. And as you can see on the screen, Zay Jones is a sit. Now, he is actually, I just received the news on my phone here that he's actually going to be out. Now, regardless of him being out or not, there's not another receiver on here that I would start anyhow or put as a cautionary start. Even Agnew, I would not. So just leave it at that and move on with the Jaguars. Saints, though, on the other hand, Chris Olave, last week, 7 catches, 10 targets, 96 yards. I mean, what else can you ask for the wide receiver 1 from the Saints? Now he gets a favorable matchup against the Jaguars. You're going to start him. He's a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 for me this week. And Michael Thomas is going to be more of a wide receiver 2 for me in this game as well. 5 catches on 8 targets, 45 yards. 9 points ain't bad, but obviously you want more. I think he can get it this week against the Jaguars. And Rashid Shaheed's going to be a sit. Sunday at 1, we got the Falcons and the Buccaneers. Drake London's been putting up some decent fantasy points here, let's be honest. Now, not something I would have thought I'd see from coming from a target of Desmond Ritter's. However, London's found a way. 9 catches, 12 targets, 125 yards last week. Oh, by the way, Ritter also threw for 3 touchdowns last week. It was against Washington, don't get me wrong, I get that. But the Buccaneers have been exposed from time to time from good receivers. Now, I'm not saying Drake London is anywhere on the tier of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nowhere near that, as St. Brown put up 30 against him last week. However, I could see Drake London putting up maybe 15 to 16 points this week, and that's for me, that's good enough for him to be a start, especially with the way most of these receivers have been playing most of this year. Go ahead and give Drake London a start. Now, obviously, they did trade for Van Jefferson a week or 2 ago. He's going to be a sit for me. Mac Hollins and Scott Miller will also be sits for me. Buccaneers side of the ball, though, is a different story. I'm going to start Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I had somebody in the comments on the ranking video last week say, no Mike Evans. Well, Mike Evans had 4 catches for 49 yards. Oh, by the way, that came off 10 targets. Now, a lot that could be looked back at the quarterback play. Don't get me wrong on that. But it was a tough matchup. And he coming off that hamstring injury, that's why he wasn't in my top 30 rankings last week for receivers. Now, this week, he's got a tough defense. However, they've been exposed from time to time as well, and they have given up a good amount of points to C.J. Stroud and Sam Howell. Now you got Baker Mayfield with 2 elite pass catchers. Yeah, I like the matchup for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Go ahead and start them. Godwin last week, 6 catches, 7 targets, pulling in most of his targets majority of the time. And for 77 yards is not bad at all. So I'll take that from Godwin there. And Trey Palmer will be a sit. I will say keep an eye on Palmer. He is starting to trend up a little bit, but not enough to where I'm ready to throw him in as a cautionary start or a start yet. Moving on, you got the Raiders and the Bears now, and Jimmy G is hurt. So that's going to hurt some of these receivers. Or is it? Well, don't expect too much here. Brian Hoyer is probably going to be the starter for them, and he is a veteran-savvy quarterback. And that's why I'm going to have Devontae Adams as a start. When you have a quarterback of that nature, you are going to go to your number 1 target majority of the time. Now, for Jimmy G, his primary target was Jacoby Myers. However, with that being said, Jacoby Myers is going to end up taking a little bit of a fall back here, okay? When he didn't have Jimmy G last time, they only ended up with 5 points. Okay, 5 points. That's all he ended up with. That was against the Chargers, one of the worst pass defenses all year. And that has a lot to say there. However, that was with O'Connell. That wasn't with Brian Hoyer. And Brian Hoyer being the veteran, like I said, I would go ahead and expect Jacoby Myers to have a little bit of a better game. So I'm going to start both of them, especially because it is up against the Bears. And the Bears are actually probably going to be without Justin Fields, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers are starts. Hunter Renfrow, no, I'm not going to start him. Adams has had a little rough couple weeks here. He did have 8 points 2 weeks ago and 4 points last week. Now he's going to have a whole week to prepare with Brian Hoyer. And this game plan is going to be based on getting the ball to Devontae Adams majority of the time, and maybe Jacoby Myers a couple times. But I think Myers, the way he's able to get open sometimes, that's going to be enough for him to be a start. Bears side of the ball. Same thing with Devontae Adams is going to be the same thing applying with DJ Moore. He's going to get majority of the targets here, especially with Justin Fields doubtful with a dislocated thumb. Darnell Mooney will be a sit, and Tyler Scott will be a sit, but I'm going to go ahead and start DJ Moore. Moving on, you got the Browns and the Colts, and I would have sat Amari Cooper last week if you had him in fantasy, or at least, like I said, cautionary start. If you had better options like I did, I would have sat him, and I did because I had better options. However, 4 catches on 8 targets for 108 yards is ridiculous. From a backup quarterback, they targeted the number 1 guy, and like I just said, when you don't have your starting quarterback, they target the number 1 guy. Listen to what I just said there, because Amari Cooper had 4 catches on 8 targets for 108 yards. Devontae Adams is a better, if not a little, the same, if not a better player than Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is very underrated in the NFL. And DJ Moore is going to be the number 1 guy. Those guys are going to get the targets. But in this game, Browns, like I said, Browns, Colts, Amari Cooper's a start, Elijah Moore sit, Donovan Peoples-Jones sit. Michael Pittman I'm going to put as a questionable or a cautionary start, and I'm also going to do the same thing for Josh Downs. Downs has been getting more and more targets with Gardner Minshew, and now he has them for the rest of the year because Anthony Richardson is now placed on IR. So Michael Pittman's cautionary start, Josh Downs cautionary start. Alec Pierce is questionable, put him as a sit. But keep an eye on this. Pittman had 9 catches for 14 targets last week for 109 yards. Downs had 5 catches for 8 targets on 21 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown helped Josh Downs. Now, knowing that Pittman's probably going to be guarded by Denzel Ward, that's a little iffy for me, but Pittman's a good enough receiver. I think he can make it viable. Both these guys would be more flex plays for me depending on who you have. Moving on, Commanders and Giants. Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuels will be starts for me on this one. Curtis Samuel, his last 3 games, has had 18 points, 19 points, and 14 points. Last week, he had 4 catches, 4 targets, 42 yards, and a touchdown. Curtis Samuel starting to ramp up here. Something I thought Jahan Dotson was going to be, but no, it seems to be Curtis Samuel. And obviously, you're going to start McLaurin as well. McLaurin, 6 catches, 11 targets, 81 yards. He's starting to ramp up as well with Sam Howell as they go. And the Giants are going to give up their passing. They're going to give up some yardage, especially with a banged-up secondary. Their secondary is pretty much depleted at this point. Now, speaking of the Giants, coming off the game against Buffalo in Buffalo, as long as Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback, which he should be, Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson are starts for me. Robinson had 8 catches, 8 targets, and 62 yards. 18 points in PPR. 14 points in PPR. Slayton had 4 catches on 6 targets for 69 yards, 10 points. Both those guys are flex plays this week going against the Commanders, especially home against the Commanders. Now, Isaiah Hodgins and Jalen Hyatt, both those guys are sits for me. Now you got a really good game again, Lions and Ravens, and Amon-Ra St. Brown put up 30 points last week in fantasy. Go ahead and start him. 12 catches, 15 targets, 124 yards. Need I say more? This dude is back in business. I mean, 1 week off, abdominal industry, abdominal injuries are hard to come by for receivers. This guy looked like he didn't even have an injury in general. Unbelievable. Now, Josh Reynolds and Jamison Williams will be cautionary starts. Ravens can be stingy at times, but it's hard to say that they're going to just shut out Amon-Ra St. Brown. And the way that Jared Goff's been playing, I don't believe that this week. Ravens side of the ball, we're going to stick with the usual here. Zay Flowers start. The rest of these guys we're going to sit. Odell Beckham, Bateman, and Aguilar. All these guys are going to be sits. Zay Flowers is, again, picking it up consistently here. Yet again, another week, another viable fantasy game. 6 catches, 8 targets, 50 yards. It's 11 right there, and then a touchdown. That's 17 in PPR. Next matchup we're going to look at is the Bills and the Patriots. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are both going to be starts in this one. Now, I do know Gabe Davis only had 2 catches for 18 yards. However, the Patriots secondary is even more depleted than the Giants right now. And Gabe Davis has been more consistent than not. His other game that he didn't have at least double digits was week 1. So, I'm not too worried about Gabe Davis here. Now, Stephon Diggs, obviously, you're going to start him. There's no doubt about it. There's no more to say there. Deontay Hardy did end up in the end zone last week. However, I'm not going to start him. This seems like it's going to be a Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and James Cook, honestly, I think is going to be the third guy here in this passing game against the Patriots. Now, Patriots side of the ball, Kendrick Bourne will be a start for me. 10 catches, 11 targets, and 89 yards. Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that right there. That's enough for me, I think, for him. They're going to be behind early in this game. The Patriots are going to throw the ball a lot. I think they're going to try to hit Bourne on a couple more of those quicker routes. And obviously, if he can get 10 catches, that's fine with me. He doesn't need 89 yards. If he can get 10 catches and 40 yards, it's 14 points. What else can you ask? You put him at a flex and run him this week if you need to. Obviously, that's only if you need to. I'm not saying just go ahead and throw him in there. If there's a better option on these starts, it's a video where I have somebody as a start and you have him on your team, throw him in there. Honestly, there's no reason to not put Kendrick Bourne as a flex if you need him in this week's matchup. But Juju Smith-Schuster and Devontae Parker, yeah, we'll go ahead and sit those guys. 4 o'clock games now. You got the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Marquise Brown, start him. I understand he had a tough game last week. I do. 7 points. Again, first time in a week or two, or since week 1 or week 2. I'd have to go back and look 100%. But week 1 or week 2, he only had a single-digit point. Every other week, he has had double-digit points, and usually in the high to mid-teens, if not in the 20s, when it came to points scored. Marquise Brown starting against Seattle. I like that matchup. Now, Rondale Moore and Michael Wilson, I'm going to sit both them again. I don't like the matchup for them against Seattle. Marquise Brown's just been the number 1 guy that Dobbs is throwing to, and that's going to bring the volume. Again, we want the volume, and that's what's going to make him fantasy viable. Seahawks, on the other hand, we're going to have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as a start. I missed DK Metcalf last week in my rankings. Bye weeks threw me off. However, I wasn't entirely wrong about that. You know, Bengals can be stingy at times, and they were. 4 catches, 10 targets, and he only ended up with 10 points overall. He had, over 60 yards. DK Metcalf with 10 points right there. Tyler Lockett, on the other hand, with that explosiveness down the field, he had 6 catches on 8 targets for 94 yards. So Tyler Lockett, I like the matchup against the Cardinals. And quarterbacks tend to light it up against the Cardinals, and there's no exception here on any reason to sit these guys. I mean, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are going to have great days overall. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I would like to see more and see them utilize him more. They're not doing that right now, so sit him for now. Steelers and Rams. Sounds like Deontay Johnson will be back now. I don't know what that role is going to look like right out the gate. Maybe they're going to ease him back into it. Maybe he doesn't play this week. Maybe they just have him go through warm-ups. I don't know. But considering the injury he had, I'm going to put him as a cautionary start. George Pickens, on the other hand, I'll start him against the Rams. And Allen Robinson and Calvin Austin go ahead and sit in this one. Now, the Rams side of the ball, Cooper Kupp's going to be a start. 7 catches on 9 targets, 148 yards, and a touchdown. Safe to say Cooper Kupp is a lock every single week going forward, unless if it's a terrible matchup that I absolutely don't like, he might be a cautionary start, but as of right now, he's a lock moving forward. Puka Nacua, on the other hand, had a little bit of a fallback here, 6 points. Like, of course, right after I said they can coexist, everyone thought they can coexist. I think that this could be a bounce back for Puka Nacua here. And I honestly believe that he's a cautionary start for me, but I'm not just going to go ahead and throw him in my lineup if I have a better option. Tutu Atwell, on the other hand, sit him as well in this matchup. I don't like the matchup for him against the Steelers. He's not going to be a main priority option for the Rams. And he only had 1 catch, 1 target, but it did go for 30 yards. So the explosiveness is definitely there. It's just a matter of getting him those targets, and he's the third option. They're not going to get it to him. Chargers are just an absolute mess, and they got to go up against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Keenan Allen will be a start, though. There's no reason you're sitting Keenan Allen. The dude has put up fantasy points again and again and again. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. He might not put up, 30, 40 points, but he might put up about close to 20. I could see him putting anywhere between 18 and 24 on the board this week against the Chiefs. They throw the ball way too much in for the Chargers. And this is going to be a matchup where they're going to fall behind, or at least they're going to have to keep throwing to keep up. Joshua Palmer did not make my top 30 this week, and that is because Austin Eckler is back. But Josh Palmer will be a cautionary start for me if you need a guy in there because of bye weeks. Palmer did do pretty decent last week, or Monday night. He had 4 catches on 7 targets for 60 yards, 10 points. Good enough for a flex play. Quentin Johnston has had 2 targets, though, over the last 2 weeks. No hype at all for him at this point moving forward. He's going to be a sit. Chiefs, on the other hand, you know Kelsey's going to be the main guy. You know Pacheco's going to be there. And Rashee Rice is going to be a start for me in this game. Chargers have a terrible pass defense here, especially in the secondary. But Rashee Rice has been the third guy and the most targeted guy other than Kelsey and Pacheco in this offense. 4 catches on 4 targets for 72 yards. He's making plays when he gets the ball in his hand. Now, the only other guy that out-targeted him as a wide receiver this week was Kadarius Toney. But Toney only put up 3 catches on 6 targets. He had 9 yards, but that touchdown kind of saved him. That touchdown saved him. He doesn't get that touchdown, he's a sit. But against the Chargers, I think they're going to try to find a way to utilize that touchdown momentum again, and he'll be a cautionary start. But you're banking on a touchdown for him. So I'm not overly excited about putting him at a flex. I'd like a better option like Joshua Palmer overall. Marquez Valdez-Scantling will be a sit in this game as well. Now you got the Packers and the Broncos ending our Sunday 4 o'clock games, and you got Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. They'll both be starts for me. A bounce-back game, I honestly think, for Jordan Love. He's going to have to target these guys to do so, especially out of the backfield as well. Aaron Jones is still questionable moving into this week. We'll see what happens with that one. But Jaden Reed's going to be a sit. Broncos side of the ball, though, Cortland Sutton, I'll start him. That touchdown against Kansas City was pretty good. Was a great catch overall in that corner, or on the edge of that boundary for out of bounds. Sutton had 4 catches on 8 targets for 46 yards. That touchdown definitely helped him, but he had 8 points regardless. He was the guy that was getting majority of the production out of this wide receiver group. Marvin Mims is not even close to being ready to be an NFL wide receiver 2 or a big playmaker wide receiver 3. And Jerry Jeudy just is not there again. He's fallen back and he's taken another step back, and again, another step back, and again, another step back. He can't figure it out right now. Sunday at 8 o'clock, we got the Dolphins and the Eagles. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I'll start both of them in this matchup. This is going to be a shootout, in my opinion, overall, especially in the cold weather of Philly. It's going to be interesting. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle will both be starts. You're going to sit Chase Claypool, and you're going to sit Braxton Berrios. These guys are options 5 and 6 in this offense at this point, especially if A-Chain comes back, which he's going to be out for a couple weeks, so he's not going to be in this matchup. But in another week or two, these guys are even pushed even farther back with A-Chain coming back. Eagles side of the ball, though, A.J. Brown's a start, and Devonta Smith is going to be a cautionary start. He is not getting a lot of targets right now, and you need that volume or at least a touchdown dependency. He isn't even really getting that right now. But as of this matchup in a game against the Dolphins where they're going to be, I think Dolphins are going to punch, and so are the Eagles. They're going to punch right back. I think that Devonta Smith could get a couple looks his way, and maybe they do end up getting him more and more targets the next couple of weeks. But as of right now, cautionary start for him. And I know that the news broke that Julio Jones did sign with the Eagles. However, I don't think he's going to get caught up to speed this week, so go ahead and sit him. And then Zacchaeus, I probably botched the hell out of that name, but go ahead and sit him as well in this matchup. Moving on to the last game of the week, Monday Night Football. Deebo Samuel did dodge a major shoulder injury from a lot of reports here going into this week, but he's going to be a cautionary start for me. Brandon Ayuk will be the start for me, and Juwan Jennings will be a sit. Brandon Ayuk is going to get a better matchup here other than Cleveland, who is one of the better defenses, and they are legit. Vikings, though, have given up a good amount of points to receivers here. So Brandon Ayuk's going to be a start for me, and like I said, Deebo questionable. That's going to be iffy going into this matchup, so he's cautionary start for me. Vikings side of the ball, though, the way that this is good looking right now, Jordan Addison's going to be more touchdown dependent. However, he is also getting a decent amount of targets. He did have 5 targets last week, not great, but that touchdown kind of saved him. 3 catches, 5 targets, 28 yards, and a touchdown. He's a cautionary start. You're going to need that touchdown, and he might score one late depending on how bad they are behind. KJ Osborne and Brandon Powell, though, go ahead and sit them. And that's going to do it for our start sit wide receiver video. If you like it, go ahead and like the video, and then also subscribe. We appreciate it a lot. Just out of curiosity also, let us know what your record is so far this year. Right now, I got 4 leagues overall. I'm 5-1 in one league, 6-0 in another, and 3-3 in the other 2 leagues. So Not too bad for me this year in fantasy football. Obviously, it's kind of hard to juggle all four, but hey, we're doing that on top of giving you guys advice. So let us know what your record is in the comments below. Go ahead and drop it. We're curious to see. But other than that, look out for the rest of the videos. We'll see you later.